Imagine you're working at some company and it's not going too well. You don't get paid enough, people make fun of you for being bad at your job, and it's basically an exercise in misery. You'd hate that job, wouldn't you? Then one day, the company hires a new employee named Steve. Steve is a likable, down-to-earth guy who's really good at his job. In fact, Steve is so good at his job that it results in you getting paid even better and getting more perks at your job. Not only that, but people are actually starting to respect your company now. It sounds like Steve is one hell of an employee, right? Now, tell me this. If you had to work with Steve on a project, would you A, respect him as a contemporary and be grateful for all the good things you've gotten because of him, or B, trash talk him every opportunity you get? Because the WNBA got a Steve this season in the form of one Caitlin Clark, and for some reason, they all collectively chose option B.
With no whistle.
Look, SVP, reality is coming.
Okay.
You know, there's levels to this thing, and that's just life. We all went through it.
Now, it's not hard to see why they did it. Being jealous of a rookie getting attention isn't something that's new to basketball. Just look at how LeBron's teammates were talking about him before he got into the league.
I don't think you can really just bring a high school player in and really just think your team gonna really turn around like that.
But this is at a new level of pettiness. In her first ever playoff game, Caitlin Clark got straight up assaulted by Dijonay Carrington. She poked her in the eye so deliberately that even a blind man could see it. And guess what? The refs didn't call a foul on the play. Hell, 17% of flagrant fouls this season in the WNBA were committed on Caitlin. And there were a bunch of other plays just like this one that weren't even called. But Caitlin, she's used to it by now, and you don't become the face of the league in your rookie year by caving to your bullies. No, you do it by taking their worst and letting them know your game does the talking. So today, we're going to take a look at all the times Caitlin Clark's bullies tried to get under her skin and how they paid the price for it, while also looking at just what it is that makes her so dominant. Let's start off with one of the most obvious ones, and probably the most shameless perpetrator on the list, Chennedy Carter. Now, Chennedy Carter is a pretty good WNBA player. She's a good scorer, a hard-nosed defender, the kind of player everyone would like to have on their team, which is why when she did this to Caitlin Clark,
Chennedy Carter now with 12 points off the bench.
It was pretty shocking. And not because Chennedy is a saint or anything. She's allegedly been kicked off not one, but 2 teams for her behavior. No, it's because this foul is so bad you can't even argue she's going for the ball. It's a dead ball play, for God's sake. Chennedy just calls her the B word, then proceeds to tackle her like a prime Cam Chancellor.
Stafford going middle, there's shot.
It wasn't given a flagrant in the game, but after it was upgraded to a flagrant. Now, even her hating antics couldn't stop the Fever from winning that game. But the next time they faced each other, Caitlin showed her just what she was really about.
Clark gets freed up. And Clark penetrating. It's 5:51 left in the first quarter, and she rebounding an advantage. Clark pulls, fires, hits.
Caitlin was in her jam. She scored 23 points on a cool 7 from 11 from the field, which is ridiculously efficient. And she also grabbed 9 assists and 8 boards, outperforming Chennedy in every single statistical category there was. She even got a block for good measure, and then nailed a dagger 3 late in the fourth to all but seal the game. That's cold stuff right there. Oh, and remember how Chennedy asked what she brings other than shooting threes? That aged really poorly because Caitlin ended up breaking the record for most assists in a WNBA season. Not the rookie record, the actual all-time record in the WNBA. Then there's the spacing Caitlin provides. See, you can't just say she shoots threes and think you're a genius, because you're actually an idiot. And that's because Caitlin isn't an ordinary three-point shooter. She's a pull-up off the dribble from 35 feet because she feels like it kind of shooter. And when you can shoot it like that, it puts the fear of God in defenders. A lot like we see with Steph in the NBA. WNBA defenders are all focused on not giving Caitlin even an inch of space, which leads to better and more open looks for her teammates. The proof? Well, you might not have known this, but Kelsey Mitchell is a certified sniper and Caitlin's teammate, and she's one of the best shooters in the WNBA for a few years now. And it just so happens that as soon as she got an elite floor spacer and passer with her, she had the highest scoring season of her career, while shooting over 40% from 3. That's not a coincidence. It's a direct effect of Caitlin Clark's presence on the basketball court.
Here's Mitchell.
Of course, jealousy is written all over the WNBA, and you can't have a good game against the Sky without them taking it as a personal attack against themselves. So, of course, Caitlin was at the end of another flagrant fall, this time courtesy of her fellow rookie and bully Angel Reese. In fact, in their very first match against each other, she did this.
And knocks it down.
And you guessed it, there was no call. The same thing happened in this game, only this time it was because Caitlin was cooking this guy. Caitlin drove in for a layup, and Angel Reese saw this as an opportunity to do her best WWE impression and give her a clothesline that came straight from hell. Thankfully, the refs called it this time for what it was, a clear flagrant foul, mostly made out of jealousy. This is not news to anyone who's followed these young women since college. Angel was a big part of the dominant LSU team that beat Caitlin Clark's team, Iowa, in the championship game. And she was all in Clark's face, letting her know about it in the dying seconds of the game. That also didn't age well, because the following year, LSU faced Iowa again, this time in the Elite Eight. And, well, Caitlin did this. She dropped a 40 bomb on LSU, and Angel got tossed out of the game when she fouled out in the fourth quarter. Since college, you could sense the animosity brewing between Angel and Caitlin, and it makes sense. Caitlin is better, so she gets more attention, which clearly annoys Angel because she thinks she deserves it too. She said so herself in a post-game press conference.
I'll look back in 20 years and be like, yeah, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person, it's because of me too, and I want y'all to realize that.
I get where Angel is coming from, sort of. She's kind of right. She and others have done a lot for women's basketball, and they deserve their props. But let's not fool ourselves here. The recent hype around the WNBA, the popularity, the celebrities showing up for the game, and the sold-out arenas, I hate to say it, but I don't think people are tuning in to see a rookie big shoot 39% from the field while still averaging less points than Caitlin Clark. But if you thought Caitlin Clark was done cooking the Chicago Sky, you had another thing coming. In their fourth and final matchup of the season, Caitlin took her game to another level. On August 31st, the Chicago Sky started the game pretty hot. They were making their shots and shutting Indiana down, leading to a 21-9 first quarter. It looked like Chicago would tie this season series and push them forward a spot for the playoffs. But then the Fever got things into gear and absolutely blew the doors off the Chicago Sky, winning 100-81 in a complete blowout. And this was all led by a legendary performance by Caitlin Clark, because Caitlin Clark proceeded to drop 31 points and 12 assists to send the Sky straight gone fishing. In that game, Caitlin put the nail in the coffin for whatever was left of the debate between her and Angel Reese for Rookie of the Year. I mean, just look at these stats and tell me who you think is better. Besides rebounds, Caitlin was statistically better at everything. She even averaged more blocks than Angel. And to be honest, there's no reason for me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here are some of the records Caitlin broke in her rookie year, just to hammer home how good she actually is versus WNBA competition. This is not normal. This is the kind of talent that pops up once or twice every generation. And yet, the women in the WNBA have nothing but disrespect for her at best, and flat-out violence at worst. I mean, look at how LeBron talks about leaving the game in a better place than you found it, and giving wisdom to younger players that will cower the league after you. Now, look at what Caitlin said when a reporter asked about her getting advice from vets around the league.
The best advice a vet has given you in game this season?
Nobody gives me advice in game. I wish.
Despite all the trash talk, all the uncalled flagrant fouls, all the disrespect from the vets, all she has done is hold her head high above all the noise and carry a 10th seed team to the playoffs while breaking all sorts of individual records on the way there. You might be wondering what this has to do with that earlier story. Remember Dijonay Carrington and the playoff series between the Fever and the Connecticut Sun? Well, this just happened, and if we've learned anything about Caitlin, it's that when she's had a bad game or gets knocked down by a dirty opponent, she doesn't whine about it. Just look at her here.
And win.
Last one. Quickly circling back on the play with your eye, what would you say to the crowd of people that think a hit like that was intentional? Maybe even
It wasn't intentional by any means. You just watched the play. It wasn't intentional.
All right, thank you.
What she does is what all the greats do. She comes back the next game filled with the fury of 1,000 angry gods and absolutely lights up her opponent. She's already beaten the Sun once this regular season, and if she catches fire, they're going to be in a world of trouble. But the question remains, how good is Caitlin Clark really? Well, I think I've come up with a metric that uses a bunch of stats to gauge how good a player is overall, and it works by assigning a given weightage to each action performed on the court. Points are worth the most, followed by assists, rebounds, blocks, then steals, so on and so forth. For the graph, I'll place players on a 2D scatter plot where the x-axis represents the player's offensive value, and the y-axis represents the player's overall quality. The higher the dot on the y-axis, the better the player is overall. The farther to the right, the stronger the player's offensive contribution. Now, this is by no means a perfect stat, and undoubtedly someone will have done something similar before. But this is just to show you the overall quality of a player based on their major statistical categories we have. This data is from the top 20 players in the WNBA this season. Obviously, the first thing that stands out is just how big of a gap there is between A'ja Wilson and the rest of the league. Honestly, if you didn't know, that woman is insane. As you come down to where the mortals operate, you'll see players like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. Now, players that you might notice their name a little bit more, like Kelsey Plum, Kelsey Mitchell, and Chennedy Carter, they fall way below the cream of the crop in the league, even though they're fantastic players in their own right. Oh, and I forgot one person. Here's Caitlin. By this metric, she has been, at worst, the 5th best player in the league in her rookie season. And she's only getting better. Just imagine what Victor Wembanyama did this season, and he still wasn't top 5. What Caitlin Clark is doing is insane for her league. Even if the Fever end up losing the series, this has been, without a shadow of doubt, the greatest rookie season in WNBA history. And if the WNBA and their players won't respect it, maybe we can. As always, thanks for watching.